Hello. So I'm here to talk about an Armor Rush deck, but it focuses mainly on the BT14 Bukamon with jamming. So Bukamon inheritable, while your opponent has no Digimon with equal or more Digivolution cards than this Digimon gains jamming during your turn. So I was thinking, oh, cool, this is a pretty cool card. What deck can really benefit from this BT14 Bukamon? And I think that the obvious answers are decks where you keep swinging a lot, very frequent swings. So it could be a level 6 Digimon that keeps attacking, unsuspending, attacking, unsuspending, attacking. Or alternatively, you go very low, and then you just swing with your rookies and your champions. So it's like, oh, cool. This Pokemon seems like a good inclusion for armor rush decks. And this is just also because we have this upcoming P117 VMon coming in demo decks that are to be released with BT14. So these have already been released for New York Comic Con, and also they are going to be promo cards for the upcoming Digimon movie in November 8th and 9th, I think. But yeah, these are the cards that will be coming out very soon. I expect them to be available for play when BT14 comes out because that's when they are widely distributed. So this seems like a good time to just create an Armor Rush deck. So my issue with Armor Rush decks in the past that focus on Magnamon X antibody is that Magnamon X antibody doesn't really accelerate the game plan of Armor Rush. So Armor Rush is when you try to rush with your opponent, and then if your Digimon loses the security battle, then you just Armor Purge. Or if they are going to be deleted by whatever effect, then you Armor Purge. But the goal ultimately is to rush them down as quickly and as um, early as you can. So when Magnamon X Antibody came out, it was a good card. Um, but it doesn't add to the win con of Armor Rush in any way. So with Armor Rush, you still want to rush your opponent down, but how does Magnamon X Antibody help with that? It doesn't. So Magnamon X Antibody is more of a defensive card than an offensive card. So instead of putting everything into rushing your opponent down, Magnamon X Antibody is just there as a big wall to prevent your opponent from rushing you down, or even to attack with smaller level 6 Digimon. It was okay at the time. Like, it doesn't really add to the win con of Armor Rush. It can help you against other Rush decks by being a big wall to block them, but it doesn't really help you against bigger decks with bigger Digimon. That was my issue with Magnamon X at the time. Like, it doesn't add any acceleration to rushing your opponent down. It serves a different purpose in your deck, so it doesn't rush. It just serves as a defensive wall, and I don't think that it really helps you to rush your opponent down in any way. But now we have this Tai Kamiya Tamer, which works very well with Magnamon X Antibody and your other Magnamons. So let's talk about the deck. Okay, so because Bukamon gives jamming, then I don't think that the jamming Vmon from BT3 is necessary. So just focusing my Vmons on draw power instead of jamming, because I already have the egg. So this Vmon is just absolutely the best Vmon for Armor Rush. So your turn, once returned, when this Digimon would digivolve into a Digimon card with a free trait. If you have a Tamer, reduce the Digivolution cost by 1. So notice how it doesn't say you need to have a blue Tamer, like any Tamer in play on your side, and you can reduce the cost by 1. So even if you have this black Tai Kamiya Tamer, it can still reduce Digivolution cost by 1. So it's like, oh, cool. It's a pretty good effect. It doesn't say armor form. It says with the free trait. So you could use this in Imperial Dramon if you wanted to. But it is worth mentioning that Vmon has Gold Vdramon, and this is not a free trait. So it is a vaccine. So even if it is an armor form, it's not a free trait armor form. So just a heads up that this cannot reduce the cost to go into Gold Vdramon. It can reduce the cost to go into Lydramon, Flamedramon, Magnamon though. So these are the champions that I'm focusing in my build because I just really want to have this Vmon and then reduce the Digivolution cost to go to my champions. When attacking, if this Digimon has 2 or more colors, draw 1. So basically, all of your Digimon that you Digivolve Vmon into, so Lydramon, Flamedramon, Magnamon, Shakomon, Magnamon X, they all have 2 or more colors. So every time you attack, you draw 1. So that's very good. This is even better than the Starter Deck 8 Vmon, but this is still a close second. Your turn, if your opponent has a level 6 or higher Digimon in play, this Digimon can Digivolve into an All-Force Vdramon in your hand for a memory cost of 4, ignoring its Digivolution requirements. So you could splash in an All-Force if you want to. That's not the direction that I want to go with this deck, but it could be something fun to do. When attacking, if you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, trigger draw 1. So this, when attacking, if you have 7 or fewer cards in hand, you draw 1. This is just an unconditional draw. Well, technically, if you have 2 or more colors, then you draw 1. But both of them are very good. You don't really need the Wanyamon, you don't really need the Upamon, just because we have more of these Vmons that can let you draw. So just relying on these inheritables to draw cards while relying on this inheritable to get jamming seems like the better combination, instead of like a draw inheritable, a draw inheritable, a draw inheritable, a draw inheritable. I'm focusing on draw and jamming, draw and jamming. So it just works better. At least I think so in the deck. So these are the 8 Vmons that you really want to Digivolve on top of Bukamon. So I did take out the Jamming Vmon, and I also took out the EX1 Vmon, because that promo Vmon is just better than the EX1 Vmon. So EX1 Vmon, your turn once per turn when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, gain 1 memory. So it's good. So you can gain 1 memory back. So for example, you can have this Vmon and then Digivolve into an armor form. You attack with the armor form would be deleted, so you armor purge. You Digivolve into another armor form. You suspend Davis Momia and Ken Ichijoji. So then you unsuspend it, and then you gain 1 memory. So effectively, it reduces Digivolution cost by 1, but then there's more hoops and hurdles to go through. This just reduces Digivolution cost by 1 anyways. So this is just much better than this EX1 Vmon. Like, it's still the same end result, where it's cheaper, but this is just way easier. You still get that 1 memory net Digivolution cost anyways, so this is just better than the EX1 Vmon, so this just replaced that EX1 Vmon entirely. So as for these other 2 Vmons, I'm using them because they have on-play effects. So BT12 Vmon, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 card with Imperial Dramon and its name, or the free trait, and 1 card with Davis Momia and its name among them to your hand. So just getting the Davis and Ken off of this could be good. So this can get you the Davis and Ken, and it can also give you any of your level 3s, any of your level 4s, excluding the hybrid, and and then the Shakomon. It cannot get you Magnamon X antibody because this is vaccine type, but it can get you basically any of these top 2 rows of Digimon. So it's like pretty cool. It's pretty good. Vmon, reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, add 1 2-color blue card among them to your hand. So basically, you can't search for any of the Vmons, but you can search for any of this row. You can search for Magnamon X antibody. You can also search for Davis and Ken. So it's still pretty good. Mainly the only difference that this one has over this one is that this one can search for Magnamon X. Because this can also search for Davis and Ken. But this is mainly used more when you're starting out. This one is used more if you want to find the Magnamon X antibody specifically. I also should mention that this can also find your Vmons. So if you want to rush your opponent down that way, you can also throw this down, grab a Vmon, play another Vmon out. So that can also be used for that. But this card on the right is mainly used for finding Magnamon X antibody. And then the lineup is pretty good. So because of the jamming, Flame Dramon is not as useful. Because when attacking, this Digimon gets plus 3000 DP for the turn. But if you have jamming, then that DP isn't as useful. It's only useful if you're swinging into an opponent's Digimon, or if you're trying to bypass one of their blockers by gaining enough DP to go over it. But otherwise, this is not as useful as the other armor forms. Lydramon, when Digivolving, suspend one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. So you can suspend their Digimon early, swing over them to get rid of their tempo, to just slow them down a bit, or just being able to suspend their blocker so they can swing into their security. It's also cool because this is green and blue. So if you do have that, then the Davis and Ken will give you +2 memory, start of your main phase instead of +1. So this is pretty good for the Davis Ken being able to gain more memory, or just being good for suspending their Digimon, taking out their Digimon, or suspending their blocker and then going for security. So this one is just the better armor form of these two. Magnamon. So when Digivolving, unsuspend this Digimon, it gets plus 2000 DP until the end of your opponent's next turn for each card with armor form and traits in your trash. So that this Magnamon for this deck is not as good as the BT13 Magnamon, but still good enough to have. So I'm keeping it at 2, at least for the moment. I might increase or decrease the ratios, depending on how I feel with Awakening of the Golden Knight. But this seems good. It's just not as useful as this Magnamon. But I do want to mention that because of the DP gain, it is very useful as a blocker. So this is more on the defensive side of the deck. So my issue with Armor Rush being defensive before was that the defense was okay, but it wasn't amazing. But now if we have this St15 Tai Kamiya, then now I think that we can make an Armor Rush deck that's also defensive, while still getting a good amount of defense for it to actually matter. So yeah, this is good for defense. You could also attack with it, but I think that this is just better for defense. Magnamon from BT13. All turns when this Digimon would leave the battle area, draw 1, and then you play 1 Vmon from your hand or from this card sources without paying the cost. So if you play one of these Vmons, you can just search. Or if you play this Vmon, then the next time you go into an armor form, then this will just cost 1 less. So I would say that all of your Vmons are pretty good. So even if this has an inheritable, or not the inheritable, it has that main effect, your turn once per turn effect, it's still pretty good to on-play with this Magnamon out. So honestly, all of your Vmons are pretty good to on-play with this Magnamon. But yeah, you can draw 1, you play out a Vmon. So this has a better benefit than this Magnamon. So in the case of DP reduction, where this is delayed from having 0 DP, you can still play out one of these Vmons. Unlike this one, where you could armor purge, but then the Vmon would be delayed anyways. So you can't save the Vmon from DP reduction with the BT8 Magnamon. The BT13 Magnamon, however, can still play out a Vmon, even if this is delayed by DP reduction. This one is better than the BT13 Magnamon, assuming that it has some kind of enchantment attached to it. Like if it has +1 security attack, or if it has some kind of effect that you used on this Magnamon, and then you still want the Vmon underneath to retain that effect, then it would be better. But right now I'm not running any fire rockets or anything like that, so this Magnamon is good for specific usage, but this Magnamon is just better for this build. So Shakomon, basically Shakomon is just to DNA Digivolve one of your Magnamons with another level 4. So you could also use Chimeramon. Chimeramon is also a great choice. So I'm debating between Shakomon and Chimeramon actually, but I think that this one might be better just because it has that recovery +1, and then this is more on the defensive side. So just having recovery seems good, and then this when DNA Digivolving, return one of your opponent's Digimon whose level is less than or equal to the number of cards in your security stack to its owner's hand. So if you have 5 or less security, then you can recover. So you can have at most 6 security with this card's effect, and then you can return one of your opponent's level 6 or lower to their hand. Some people are confused because they see if you have 5 or fewer security cards, so they think, oh, you can only recover up to 5. But this is when you are starting out with 5 or fewer, then you recover up to 6. So this is pretty good for bouncing a level 6 if you need to. So this is also defensive, so recover and you get rid of an opponent's Digimon. Magnamon X Antibody is the star of this deck. So I do want this deck to be more aggro focused, but I also do want it to have a good amount of defense. So the kicker of this is that opponent's turn, when an opponent's Digimon attacks, if a card with armor form in its traits or X Antibody is in this Digimon's Digivolution cards, you may switch the target of attack to this Digimon. This can happen repeatedly, as many times as you want, over and over again. So if they have 4 attackers out, they can just keep redirecting to this Magnamon X Antibody. So it's just a very solid wall. I don't like the 11,000 DP because there are a lot of Digimon with 12,000, 13,000, 14,000 DP, some even more. But, you know, they sit usually around 13,000 for the meta decks right now. So this Magnamon X, I don't really like the 11,000 DP. All turns, when this Digimon would be delayed, you may place the top card of this Digimon on top of your security stack face down to prevent the deletion. So let's talk about this Tai Kamiya. I'm going to skip the option card for now. Start of your turn, if you have 2 or fewer memories, set it to 3. All turns, when an attack target is switched, by suspending this tamer, draw 1, and one of your Digimon gets plus 2,000 DP until the end of the turn. So this is just good synergy with Magnamon X Antibody. So 11,000 DP is not great as a blocker, but if you can suspend this Tai Kamiya, give this plus 2,000 DP for the turn, while also drawing 1 card from the Tai Kamiya, so it could be like 13,000 DP for the turn. So anything that your opponent attacks you with DP lower than 13,000 will not get by. If you have 2 Tai Kamiyas, then you can have 4,000 DP more, so you can have 15,000 DP. So this is like, oh cool, 15,000 is on the higher end of Digimon cards out there. There are some cards with 16,000, 17,000 DP, but you know, for the most part, 15,000 is pretty solid. So you can block most of your opponent's Digimon, most of their Digimon without any buff effects. So this is just pretty good. It can also be used on, of course, Magnamon and Magnamon X. No, Magnamon BT8 and Magnamon BT13, because these also block, so they can switch the attack target. So they can be used for that, of course. And let's say your opponent does have a blocker, which is one of the countermeasures against Armor Rush. So you try to rush down your opponent throws down a Mechanorimon. You're just like, oh man, that Mechanorimon has 6,000 DP, what am I supposed to do now? So you can swing with Lydramon or whatever, 5,000 DP. They block with their blocker, and if you have this Takamiya out, you gain that 2,000 DP, draw one card, you're now 7,000 DP, attacking into their blocker. So this Tai Kamiya is just good for you to attack, not worry as much about their blockers, because you can overcome the DP gap with this Tai Kamiya, or you can use this defensively, so you can redirect their attack into Magnamon X antibody or your other Magnamons, and then gain more DP, so you can more reliably redirect attacks and then still live. So this is just good. So it's good offensively, good defensively. This is just a pretty good defensive wall that got even better with the release of St15 Tai Kamiya. These Magnamons can also benefit from Tai Kamiya. So Tai Kamiya is just a really good piece of the deck, just because of the redirections that you have, and also for the aggro that you want to. You don't really think about this card as an aggro card, but it does really help you if you need to attack over their blocker. Even if you have this Magnamon X antibody, this can now also be used offensively. It's 11,000 DP. If your opponent has like a 13,000 DP blocker, same thing. You can just attack, they block, and then you just gain enough DP to go over them. So it's like, oh, cool, this card is now offensively good, defensively good. This is offensively good, defensively good. So it just helps you to overcome their blockers, and also to help you to block their rushers or even their big Digimon from swing at you for security checks. So it's like, good. Awakening of the Golden Knight. While you have a Digimon with armor form and its traits in play, you may use this card without meeting its color requirements. So basically, this card is just to go from your armor form to another Magnamon in name. So you could... So this is like the new armor texture, basically. So if you have BT8 Magnamon, when Digivolving, unsuspend this Digimon. Let's say you swung at them with any of these armor forms. You're now suspended. Awakening of the Golden Knight, you can go into this Magnamon, gain a bunch of DP, unsuspend itself. Or you can go into this Magnamon, nothing happens when Digivolving, but if you have a Davis and Ken, you can still unsuspend it. So you can get that extra check via Awakening of the Golden Knight. Or you can just go from any of these armor forms into Magnamon X antibody for 3 cost. So if you go from Magnamon to this, then you just pay 3. Magnamon can just go into this for 4, so you don't really need this as much. But if you have Lydramon or Flamedramon, you want to go to Magnamon X, you can just go for 3 memory. You may Digivolve one of your Digimon with armor form and its traits into a Digimon card with Magnamon and its name in your hand, ignoring its Digivolution requirements, and without paying its memory cost. The Digimon that Digivolved with this effect can't have its DP reduced by your opponent's effects until the end of your opponent's turn. And then security effect, return 1 card with Magnamon and its name from your trash to your hand, and add this card to your hand. So this is pretty good. It occurs to me now that I don't really need hybrids, because this basically acts as a means to go into a Magnamon and then unsuspend if you have Davis Ken. But you know, this might be useful. So Laplace's Demon. So this is a card that I was like, could it work in this deck? And I was like thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, it probably could. It probably could work in this deck very well. So until the end of your opponent's turn, one of your opponent's Digimon gains start of your main phase, this Digimon attacks. So for 1 cost, you choose which one of your opponent's Digimon attacks you. So I was thinking about how this deck would pan out, and you know, it's cool if you have this Magnamon gain a whole bunch of DP, but if it's like a 19,000 DP Digimon or whatever, your opponent probably would not want to attack into it because they know, oh, if I attack into it, I'm going to lose my level 6 Digimon. That's 13,000 DP, 15,000 DP because of this absurd amount of DP that this Magnamon can get. So they are not going to attack into you. So what really? So you have this blocker out, but then the blocker, all it does is just stall your opponent for a turn, so then they won't attack you. But it could be just better if this blocker being on the field could remove one of your opponent's very big Digimon. And what enables that to happen is if you have Laplace's Demon. So let's say you have like 4 armor forms in the trash. I think that's a pretty reasonable number. You Digivolve into Magnamon, so you gain 2,000 DP for each armor form in trash. So you gain 8,000 DP. This is now 15,000 DP. Your opponent's 13,000 DP Digimon doesn't want to attack you. So, you know, you want to get rid of that thing. So for 1 cost, target that Digimon, start their turn, then they have to attack, you block, and then you just get rid of the Digimon. So that's pretty good. Even if you have fewer armor forms in trash, even if you have like 1 or 2, just having this Tai Kamiya is very, very clutch, I want to say. It's just cool because even if you have just 2, even if you have just 2 armor forms in trash, then this is now 11,000 DP. Tai Kamiya can boost this up to 13,000 DP, so you can block, get rid of your 13,000 DP opponent's Digimon, and then you armor purge, and then the Vmon underneath is still massive as well. So it could be like 7,000 DP, could be like 8,000 DP, depending on which Vmon. But yeah, it's still like a massive Vmon, so your opponent can't easily swing over it. But yeah, this is just pretty cool. Just having Tai Kamiya, Laplace's Demon, and some blockers is pretty good synergy. It could also be used on Magnamon X, of course. So if you just have this Magnamon X chilling on the field, you use Laplace's Demon, force your opponent's Digimon to attack, you redirect, and then you can just basically guarantee that you get a card draw. So Tai Kamiya, when it's on the field, your opponent probably will not want to attack your blockers. They probably will not want to attack if you have redirection effects because they know, oh, I'm going to lose a Digimon. I'm going to give my opponent a free card draw from them suspending the Tai Kamiya. So Laplace's Demon is the workaround around that. So you don't give them any choice. They have to attack. And when they do, then you're just going to get some free card draws. You're going to get like a deletion for one of their Digimon. So it's just pretty good for Armor Rush. Sora and Joe. Start of your turn. If your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution cards in play, gain 2 memory. Your turn, when you attack with a blue Digimon, you may suspend the Samer to trash up to 2 Digivolution cards from the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon. So this is in this deck mainly because I want to try this Bukamon variant. So if your opponent has no Digimon with more cards, with equal or more Digivolution cards than you, then you have jamming. So what you can do, even if you have a Vmon, just like a regular Vmon with Bukamon underneath it, your opponent has a level 3 that they just pushed out of raising, so they have equals Digivolution sources as your Digimon. So you, Sora and Joe, so you declare attack with one of your Vmons with the Bukamon underneath. Sora and Joe trash the source from underneath one of your opponent's Digimon. Now you have more sources, so you gain jamming. So it's like cool. Even your level 3 can have jamming. and it's just better for your level 4s to have jamming, just so they don't get deleted as easily. Sometimes you don't want to Sora and Joe because you do want your level 4 to be deleted so that you can digivolve into another armor form and then unsuspend it for another security check. But most of the time, Sora and Joe is just useful for gaining you extra memory or trashing the sources underneath their Digimon so you can get jamming, or just trashing problematic inheritables underneath their Digimon that you just really want to get rid of anyways. So Sora and Joe is just a pretty good include for the deck, but just being able to give your level 3s jamming is pretty nice. So if you have a blue Digimon in play, gain 1 memory at the start of your main phase. If you have green Digimon in play, gain 1 memory. So all of your Digimon are blue. So if you have a Digimon in raising, you push it out. Or if you have a Digimon at the start of your turn that's already in the battle area, then you can just gain 1 memory at the beginning of your main phase. If you have a Lodgermon, instead of gaining 1, you gain 2. So this is just pretty good. And then when you digivolve into a Digimon with 2 or more colors, then you suspend this tamer to unsuspend that Digimon. So you can get some extra checks in that way. Or even if you don't want to check, you can just digivolve, and then if your turn is going to pass, suspend this tamer, so your armor form is now unsuspended. Lanamon, I'm still thinking if Lanamon is worth putting into the stack, just because I'm still thinking about the ratios of Magnamon and Awakening of the Golden Knight. But Lanamon seems good. Digivolve on top of your blue hybrid. Put one of your many Vmons underneath it. Bonus if you put this Vmon underneath it so you can get that draw. But anyways, you digivolve into Lanamon. Put a Vmon underneath. It gets jamming. You swing. And then you can then DNA digivolve into Shakamon. Assuming they have another Magnamon out. But yeah, it's just a pretty nifty card to use. There was something that I wanted to talk about, but I don't think that I remember. But I think that this is pretty good. Basically, rush your opponent down with armor forms. And then if you want, you can also just go the more defensive route. Go into Magnamon X. You're now like an unstoppable wall that's hard to remove. If they remove this by deleting it, then you just prevent that deletion. You put this on top of your security stack. So it's like, oh, cool. You basically get a recovery. Your stack is just protected so you can swing again next turn. The only things that this doesn't prevent against are DP reduction or bouncing effects. However, Awakening of the Golden Knight prevents DP reduction for a turn. So this is pretty good. But I think that this is pretty fun, just being able to give a whole bunch of your Digimon jamming. Just jamming. Your Digimon lives. Digivolve into armor form. Digivolve into Awakening. Digivolve into Magnamon X. And then just being able to just keep redirecting their attacks. So it's not as aggressive as the previous deck, but I do like how defensive this deck is now able to become, just because now you have access to so much jamming, and you also have access to St15 Tai Kamiya, so you now can be a very reliable defense against your opponent attacking you. And just having Laplace's Demon as a form of removal is just cool. So it is better than just flat out removing their Digimon with something like Megadeth or DP reduction or whatever. Because with Laplace's Demon, you force them to attack into you so that you can still benefit from the card draws from your Tai Kamiyas. So it's like, oh, cool. If you just use Megadeth or whatever, you don't get that draw one. If you have Laplace's Demon, you have, of course, you have Tai Kamiya to be able to use Laplace's Demon, but you can still get that draw 1, draw 2, however many Tai Kamiyas you have. So just having that, so you can get rid of your opponent's Digimon for 1 memory, and then just keep drawing a bunch of cards. So it just seems like a very great include in the deck. But yeah, this is what my list is currently looking like for BT14 format. I will post my current list very soon in the future for the current format. I'm not using any Magnamon X Antibody, any Awakening of the Golden Knight in my list so far. I know that we just got St15 Tai Kamiya, and it's very good. But my current list is more heavily aggro focused, so I will post my list in the very near future. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I will let you know how this deck goes.